Picture this. You're lying awake at 3 in the morning, your mind racing with worries about tomorrow's presentation, next month's bills, or that conversation you had 6 months ago that still haunts you. Your thoughts spiral like leaves caught in a whirlwind, each one pulling you further from peace, further from control. You reach for your phone, scroll mindlessly through social media, hoping for distraction, but the anxiety only deepens. Sound familiar? What if I told you that over 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor faced the exact same mental turmoil and not only found a solution, but left us a blueprint for mastering our minds that remains as powerful today as it was in ancient Rome? This isn't just another self-help video promising quick fixes and empty platitudes. This is about a philosophy so profound, so practical, that it helped build empires, survive slavery, and transform ordinary people into extraordinary leaders. The Stoics discovered something revolutionary. When you fix your mind first, everything else in your life naturally falls into place. But here's what most people don't understand about Stoicism. It's not about suppressing emotions or accepting defeat. It's about wielding the most powerful force in the universe, your mind, with the precision of a master craftsman. Today, you're going to learn how to do exactly that. Imagine walking through the marble halls of ancient Rome, past senators debating the fate of nations, past merchants haggling in bustling markets, until you reach the private chambers of Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world. Yet here he sits, not counting gold or plotting conquests, but writing in his personal journal, wrestling with the same human struggles you face every day: fear, anger, disappointment, the weight of responsibility. But Marcus had discovered something that separated him from every other ruler in history. He understood that true power doesn't come from controlling others, it comes from controlling yourself, and that begins with mastering your mind. In his meditations, he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." This wasn't just philosophical poetry. This was a battle-tested strategy from a man who led armies, governed an empire, and faced plagues, betrayals, and personal tragedies that would break most people. The first principle Marcus mastered, and the one that will transform your life, is the dichotomy of control. Think about your biggest worry right now. Really think about it. Is it something you can directly influence through your actions, or is it something completely outside your control? Marcus realized that human suffering comes from trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting what we actually can influence. When barbarian tribes threatened Rome's borders, Marcus didn't waste energy cursing the weather that delayed his troops or lamenting the disloyalty of allies. Instead, he focused entirely on his response, his strategy, his leadership. He knew that his thoughts, his decisions, and his actions were his domain. Everything else belonged to fate. But how do you apply this ancient wisdom to your modern life? When your boss criticizes your work, you can't control their words or their mood, but you can control how you interpret their feedback and how you respond. When the stock market crashes and your investments plummet, you can't control global economics, but you can control your spending, your learning, and your preparation for the future. When someone you love disappoints you, you can't control their choices, but you can control your boundaries, your forgiveness, and your own growth. This shift in perspective isn't just mentally liberating, it's practically powerful. Instead of wasting energy on frustration and blame, you channel everything into effective action. Consider Epictetus, born a slave in ancient Greece, physically disabled, owned by another human being, with seemingly no control over anything in his life. Yet this man became one of history's most influential philosophers because he discovered that even in chains, his mind remained free. He taught that we are not disturbed by events themselves, but by our judgments about those events. When his master broke his leg, Epictetus didn't rage against the injustice or sink into self-pity. Instead, he used the experience to understand that external circumstances, no matter how harsh, could never touch his inner freedom. His teachings would later influence emperors, shape Christian theology, and provide the foundation for modern cognitive behavioral therapy. The second principle that will revolutionize your thinking is the practice of negative visualization, what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum. This isn't about becoming pessimistic or expecting the worst. It's about building mental resilience by imagining loss before it happens, so you can appreciate what you have while you have it and remain unshaken when change inevitably comes. Seneca, the wealthy advisor to Emperor Nero, would regularly imagine losing his fortune, his position, even his life. This wasn't morbid thinking, it was strategic preparation. He wrote, "What is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. The thing that has long been expected softly loses its effect when it comes." When you practice negative visualization, you're not inviting misfortune, you're building immunity against it. Imagine losing your job tomorrow. How would you survive? What skills would you rely on? What networks would you activate? This mental exercise doesn't create anxiety, it creates preparedness and gratitude. When you truly contemplate losing your health, your relationships, or your possessions, you begin to appreciate them with fresh eyes. That morning, coffee tastes richer. That conversation with your friend feels more precious. That ordinary Tuesday becomes extraordinary because you recognize its temporary nature. Seneca demonstrated this principle when Nero turned against him and demanded his suicide. Having spent years contemplating this possibility, Seneca faced his death with remarkable composure, discussing philosophy with his friends as he slowly bled out in a warm bath. His mental preparation didn't make the situation pleasant, but it allowed him to maintain dignity and peace in his final moments. This is the power of negative visualization. It transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a prepared participant in life's inevitable changes. The third principle involves understanding the true nature of obstacles, what Marcus Aurelius called the impediment becoming the way. In your life, you've probably experienced moments where a setback led to an unexpected opportunity, where a rejection opened a door you didn't even know existed, where a failure taught you lessons that success never could. The Stoics understood that obstacles aren't just inevitable, they're essential for growth, character development, and discovering your true capabilities. When Rome faced the Antonine Plague, killing millions of people and threatening the empire's stability, Marcus Aurelius didn't see it merely as a catastrophe to endure. He saw it as a test of his leadership, an opportunity to demonstrate Stoic principles under extreme pressure, and a chance to serve his people when they needed him most. He stayed in Rome when others fled, organized relief efforts, and maintained order through personal example. The plague didn't break him. It revealed his character and strengthened his legacy. Think about the obstacles in your own life differently. That difficult boss isn't just making your job harder, they're teaching you patience, resilience, and perhaps pushing you toward a better opportunity. That financial setback isn't just a loss, it's a masterclass in budgeting, prioritizing, and discovering what you truly need versus what you merely want. That health scare isn't just frightening, it's a wake-up call to take better care of yourself and appreciate the gift of each day. When you reframe obstacles as training rather than punishment, as opportunities rather than injustices, your entire relationship with difficulty transforms. The fourth principle centers on the concept of memento mori, remembering death, not to become morbid but to become alive. The Stoics kept death constantly in mind because mortality gives meaning to every moment, urgency to every goal, and perspective to every problem. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that he was just a temporary arrangement of atoms, that his time was limited, and that this knowledge should inspire him to live with purpose rather than waste time on trivial pursuits. Consider how differently you would approach today if you knew it was your last. Would you spend it scrolling through social media, complaining about minor inconveniences, or holding grudges against people you love? The awareness of death doesn't diminish life, it intensifies it. When you truly grasp that your time is finite, you become more generous with your attention, more selective with your energy, and more focused on what actually matters. That argument with your spouse about whose turn it is to take out the trash suddenly seems less important when viewed against the backdrop of mortality. Seneca practiced this daily, writing to his friend Lucilius, "Let us examine ourselves and rid ourselves of the faults we have acquired. When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, when the whole house has grown still, I examine the entire day and go back over what I've done and said, hiding nothing from myself, passing nothing by." This evening reflection, powered by the awareness that each day brings us closer to our final day, transforms routine self-examination into profound spiritual practice. The fifth principle involves cultivating what the Stoics called sympatheia, the understanding that we are all interconnected parts of a larger whole. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We were born to work together, like feet, hands and eyes, like the two rows of teeth, upper and lower." This isn't just philosophical poetry, it's a practical recognition that your well-being is intimately connected to the well-being of others, and that cooperation serves your interests better than competition or isolation. When someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of responding with anger, remember that they might be rushing to the hospital, dealing with an emergency, or simply having the worst day of their life. This perspective doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it prevents their actions from disturbing your peace. When a colleague takes credit for your work, instead of plotting revenge, consider that their insecurity might stem from deeper struggles you can't see, and focus on maintaining your own integrity rather than matching their behavior. Epictetus taught his students to see every interaction as an opportunity to practice virtue, to respond with wisdom rather than react with emotion. When someone insults you, they're giving you a chance to practice patience. When someone needs help, they're offering you the opportunity to practice kindness. When someone disagrees with you, they're providing material for practicing open-mindedness. This shift from seeing others as obstacles to seeing them as training partners transforms your relationships and reduces the friction in your daily life. The sixth principle revolves around the discipline of desire, learning to want what happens rather than demanding that what you want must happen. This doesn't mean becoming passive or abandoning your goals. It means holding your preferences lightly and finding peace regardless of outcomes. Seneca demonstrated this when he lost his vast fortune multiple times throughout his life, each time rebuilding without bitterness or despair because he understood that external goods are temporary loans from fortune, not permanent possessions. When you practice the discipline of desire, you maintain motivation while releasing attachment to specific results. You can work toward that promotion while accepting that you might not get it. You can pursue that relationship while understanding that it might not work out. You can invest in that business while knowing it might fail. This approach doesn't reduce your effort, it reduces your suffering and increases your resilience. Marcus Aurelius faced this test when his beloved son Commodus turned out to be a cruel and incompetent ruler, essentially destroying much of what Marcus had built. Rather than rage against this outcome or sink into despair, Marcus accepted that he had done his best as both emperor and father, and that the results were beyond his control. His peace came not from getting what he wanted, but from wanting what he got, even when what he got was heartbreaking. The seventh principle focuses on the view from above, a mental exercise where you imagine yourself rising higher and higher until you can see your problems from the perspective of cosmic time and space. Marcus Aurelius regularly practiced this visualization, imagining himself looking down from the heavens at the earth, seeing cities as tiny dots, seeing human conflicts as brief disturbances in an otherwise peaceful landscape, seeing his own life as a brief flicker in the vast expanse of time. This perspective doesn't minimize your problems or dismiss your emotions, it contextualizes them. That embarrassing moment from last week that keeps replaying in your mind becomes less significant when you realize that in 100 years, everyone who witnessed it will be dead, and in 1,000 years it will be as if it never happened. That career setback that feels devastating right now becomes more manageable when you consider that you're part of a species that survived ice ages, plagues, and countless other challenges that make your current difficulty seem almost trivial in comparison. The view from above also reveals the temporary nature of all conditions, both pleasant and unpleasant. When you're suffering, you can find comfort in knowing that this too shall pass. When you're enjoying success, you can appreciate it more fully while understanding that it won't last forever. This perspective cultivates both gratitude during good times and patience during difficult ones. The eighth principle involves what Epictetus called the discipline of action, ensuring that everything you do serves the common good while maintaining your personal integrity. This doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for others. It means recognizing that your individual flourishing is connected to the flourishing of your community, your family, and ultimately all of humanity. When you act with virtue, you strengthen the social fabric that supports everyone, including yourself. Cato the Younger exemplified this principle when he opposed Julius Caesar's rise to power, knowing that his resistance would likely cost him his life. Cato wasn't motivated by personal ambition or hatred, but by his conviction that preserving the Roman Republic served the greater good. When defeat became inevitable, he chose suicide rather than submit to tyranny, making his death a powerful statement about the value of freedom and principle. His sacrifice inspired future generations and helped preserve the ideals he died defending. In your daily life, the discipline of action means asking yourself whether your choices contribute to the kind of world you want to live in. When you're honest in small matters, you strengthen the foundation of trust that makes society function. When you treat service workers with respect, you contribute to a culture of dignity and kindness. When you admit your mistakes instead of covering them up, you model integrity for others to follow. The ninth principle centers on the practice of evening reflection, what Seneca called the daily examination of conscience. Each night before sleep, review your day not to judge yourself harshly, but to learn from your experiences and plan for improvement. Ask yourself what you did well, what you could have done better, and what lessons you can carry forward. This practice transforms every day into a learning opportunity and every mistake into valuable data for future growth. Seneca wrote about this practice extensively, describing how he would mentally replay conversations, decisions, and reactions, always looking for ways to align his behavior more closely with Stoic principles. He didn't use this reflection to torture himself with regret, but to build wisdom and character over time. This nightly practice created a feedback loop that accelerated his personal development and deepened his understanding of human nature. When you adopt evening reflection, you begin to see patterns in your behavior that were previously invisible. You notice that you always get angry when you're hungry, that you make better decisions in the morning than at night, that certain people or situations consistently trigger specific reactions. This awareness gives you the power to prepare for challenges, optimize your environment, and gradually reshape your automatic responses. The 10th and perhaps most powerful principle involves understanding that your mind is not just a passive receiver of experiences, but an active creator of your reality. The Stoics taught that between any stimulus and your response lies a space, and in that space lies your freedom and your power. You cannot always control what happens to you, but you always control how you interpret and respond to what happens to you. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated this power when he chose to see the burden of leadership not as a curse imposed upon him, but as an opportunity to serve others and practice virtue on the largest possible stage. He could have interpreted his responsibilities as unfair limitations on his personal freedom, but instead, he saw them as chances to live according to his values and make a positive difference in the world. This principle transforms everything, because it reveals that you are not a victim of your circumstances, your past, or your emotions. You are the author of your own experience, the director of your own story, the architect of your own character. When someone criticizes you, you choose whether to hear an attack or feedback. When you face a setback, you choose whether to see failure or education. When you encounter difficulty, you choose whether to experience suffering or training. The beauty of Stoic philosophy lies not just in its intellectual elegance, but in its practical power to transform ordinary moments into opportunities for growth, ordinary people into extraordinary individuals, and ordinary lives into meaningful legacies. Every time you choose patience over anger, wisdom over impulsiveness, or service over selfishness, you're participating in a tradition that stretches back over 2 millennia, a tradition that has guided emperors and slaves, philosophers and soldiers, through every conceivable human challenge. But here's what makes this philosophy truly revolutionary in our modern age. We live in a world that constantly tells us that happiness comes from external sources, that success is measured by what others think of us, that peace requires perfect circumstances. The Stoics discovered the opposite truth, that happiness comes from internal alignment, that success means living according to your values regardless of outcomes, and that peace is possible even in the midst of chaos, because it originates in your mind, not your circumstances. Think about the people in your life who seem genuinely content, who maintain their composure under pressure, who treat others with consistent kindness, regardless of how they're treated in return. These individuals have intuitively grasped what the Stoics systematically developed: that character is more valuable than reputation, that principles matter more than popularity, and that inner peace is worth more than external validation. When you begin to fix your mind first, something magical happens. The energy you previously spent on worry, anger, and frustration becomes available for productive action. The mental space previously occupied by resentment and anxiety opens up for creativity and problem-solving. The emotional resources previously drained by trying to control others become available for improving yourself. You don't just feel better, you become more effective, more resilient, and more capable of handling whatever life throws at you. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without effort. The Stoics understood that philosophy is not an academic exercise, but a way of life that requires daily practice, constant vigilance, and ongoing commitment. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for publication. He wrote them as daily reminders to himself, as tools for staying on track when the pressures of leadership threaten to overwhelm his principles. You need the same kind of daily practice, the same commitment to ongoing growth, the same willingness to examine your thoughts and redirect your attention when it wanders into unproductive territory. This might mean starting each morning with a few minutes of reflection on Stoic principles, ending each evening with an honest assessment of how well you lived up to your values, or simply pausing throughout the day to ask yourself whether your current thoughts and actions are serving your highest good. The path forward begins with a simple recognition that your mind is your most powerful tool, and like any tool, it becomes more effective with proper training and regular maintenance. You wouldn't expect to build a house with a rusty hammer or paint a masterpiece with dried-out brushes, yet many people try to create meaningful lives with untrained, undisciplined minds filled with worry, resentment, and distraction. Starting today, you can begin the process of mental transformation that has empowered individuals for over 2,000 years. When you wake up tomorrow morning, instead of immediately reaching for your phone, spend a few minutes considering what kind of person you want to be that day. When you encounter your first challenge, instead of reacting automatically, pause and ask yourself how you can respond in a way that reflects your values. When you go to bed tomorrow night, instead of falling asleep to the glow of a screen, reflect on what you learned and how you can do better. The Stoics believe that every human being has the potential for wisdom, virtue, and inner peace, regardless of their circumstances, background, or past mistakes. They proved this belief through their own lives, transforming themselves from ordinary individuals struggling with ordinary human problems into examples of extraordinary character and resilience. Marcus Aurelius started as a reluctant ruler, overwhelmed by responsibility. Seneca began as an ambitious politician, tempted by wealth and power. Epictetus emerged from slavery and physical disability. Yet all of them discovered that by fixing their minds first, everything else in their lives naturally fell into place. Your journey of transformation starts now, with this moment, with this decision to take responsibility for your mental state and commit to the daily practice of Stoic principles. You have within you the same capacity for wisdom that guided emperors, the same potential for resilience that sustained slaves, the same power for inner peace that comforted philosophers facing death. The only question is whether you'll choose to develop these capacities or continue letting your untrained mind create unnecessary suffering and missed opportunities. Remember, you don't need perfect circumstances to begin practicing these principles. You don't need to wait until you feel ready, and you don't need anyone's permission to start transforming your mental habits. The power to change your experience of life lies entirely within your control, waiting for you to claim it. The ancient Stoics faced wars, plagues, betrayals, and every form of human suffering, yet they found ways to maintain their peace, serve others, and live with dignity. Your challenges, whatever they may be, are not greater than your capacity to handle them wisely. The invitation is simple but profound. Fix your mind first, and watch as everything else in your life begins to align with your highest aspirations. This isn't just ancient wisdom, it's a practical blueprint for thriving in the modern world, tested by time and proven effective across cultures, centuries, and circumstances. The question isn't whether these principles work. The question is whether you'll commit to practicing them consistently enough to experience their transformative power in your own life. The choice, as always, is entirely yours. What aspect of Stoic philosophy resonates most strongly with your current situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's build a community of people committed to fixing their minds first and supporting each other on this ancient but eternally relevant path to wisdom, resilience, and inner peace.